Hey everyone, Kelly Dean Allen here with you again. Today we're going to have a look at how to play the absolutely scorching 1973 track Razamanaz by Scottish band Nazareth, the blistering opening track from the band's third album of the same name. Let's close in here a little bit and get started, shall we? Alright then, Razamanaz and Nazareth from 1973's album of the same name. We are in standard tuning for this tutorial. The opening riff to this one and the riff that we're playing all throughout this track goes a little something like this. Right there. All power chords, 3-finger power chords, G, A, D, and E. Those 4 power chords there. We're going to start in G, slide it into A, and then hit it again. Then you're going to do 4 mutes, down, up, down, up. Kind of like that, right? You have to be careful when you slide into A here, not to just release the chord, right? And just kind of lightly hold the strings and do those mutes, which is kind of the natural thing to do. Or you're going to get that harmonic on the 5th fret. So I like to drop my fingers down on the strings to do those mutes, right? Kind of like that. And then you're going to take that A, do the same thing, slide it back to G, do 4 more mutes, and then slide that G back into A again. However, before dropping into D, into E, we're going to do 6 mutes. So the first time you do 4 mutes, the second time you do 4 mutes, the second time you go into that A, we're going to do 6 mutes. 4, 4, 6. And then a D power chord into an E power chord to finish up the riff, right? And then right back to A to start the riff again. Right, and that is the opening riff to this one, and the riff that is played in the middle of every verse. So nice and slow. And then you finally drop into A after repeating the riff twice and the first verse starts just over drums. Now, over top of that riff, all throughout this song are little licks that Manny Charlton is throwing in. We're not going to cover them all, but I am going to cover the first 6. And all of the licks going forward are either the same as these or slight variations on them, right? So this is the first lick. Just a quick little bend of this 7 of the G, kind of like a little pre-bend off to 5, kind of like that, right? Into this. Just bending that 7 of the G, riding down the 5s of the B and the high E, and then dropping onto 8 of the B and choking it off, right? And then the next lick is that right there. So this is all kind of a Dorian, right? So it's like A minor pentatonic, but we're going to be adding in this note here on the 7 of the B, which gives it a bit more of a Dorian scale flavor, right? So that's the third lick. So we're going 8, 7, 5, up to 7 of the G, back to 5 of the B, and then back onto 7 for a little half step bend release off to 5. With a little pull off to 5, right? So those are the first 3 licks. Right? 4th lick is that right there. Just bending that 7, riding down those 5s, choking off on the high E. Kind of like that, right? That's the 5th lick. 8, 7, 5, 8. Choke it off. Right? And then the final lick is that right there. Sliding into 10 of the B, down to 8 of the high E, and back to the 10 of the B with a double hit. Right into this. Just all on the 8s and 10s of the B and the high E, and then finishing up on the 9 of the G, back to the 8 of the B. Finishing on that 8, right? Just little pull-offs from 10 off to 8. And those are the 6 licks at the beginning of this track. And like I said, going forward, it's just variations on those licks. into the first verse. In the middle of the first verse, we repeat the main riff. Right back to A, choke it off, second half of the verse. And then leading into the chorus, we play the riff again. Into E, and then we're going to drop off to D for the chorus. Now, this is just a blues progression, right? But it's all very fast. Kind of like that. So we're going to go from D to A, playing the same progression. So we're holding this D5 chord, 5 of the A string, 7 of the D with our ring finger, bouncing off the 9 of the D with our pinky 3 times. Kind of like that. And then we're going to go up to 10, back off to the D5 chord, and then back on to 9. Right? And then the second half of this riff, it changes a little bit. Is that right there. So we're only going to bounce off that 9 twice before moving up to 10 the second time. 10, 9, 7, 9. Right? So that is the progression. 9, 9, 9, 10, 9, 9, 9, 10, 9, 7, 9. Right? And then we move it off to A and do the same thing. And then back to D. 10, 9, 9, 9, 10, 9, 7, 9. And then you finally move it into E for about 2 bars and bounce off that 11 of the D 4 times. Right back to the riff. Right, so that is the chorus and that little blues progression, right? Into the next verse, second chorus, same as the first. However, coming out of the second chorus, E, right? We drop into this. Leading into the guitar solo. So we're just descending down the A string from the 7, starting with mutes, right? Until you get to 2. So you're going 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 with a mute before each pick strike. Right into this. All going on the 5s and 7s of the A, D, and G with a slide into 7 to start it off. Finishing with a bend, full step bend. Give that some nice vibrato there on the 7 of the G, right? And then we're into the guitar solo. So we're going to go back into this bend, but we're going to shift fingers. We're holding this bend with our ring finger. We're going to let it tail off. And then we're going to switch to our index on that 7. Give it a full step pre-bend release. Kind of like that, right? And then you're going to grab the 9 of the D, give it a half step pre-bend release. Kind of like that, right? Into this. This whole first half of this solo is all bends, right? So we're grabbing that 7, riding down the 5s again to the B and the high E, right onto the 8 for a nice slow full step bend, pick it again, re-bend, right? Then you're going to move it up to 10, another slow full step bend, move it up to 12, another slow full step bend, and then we finally drop into a little more picking going on here, right? Moving around and whatnot rather than just slow bends. So that's all the bendy section of the first half of the solo, right? Shift fingers, pre-bend. And then you finally drop onto 10 of the high E, full step bend, into this. All on the 8s and 10s of the B and the high E. Pull it off to 8. And then finish 8, 10, 8, right? Into this repeating lick. Right there. So just bend of that 10 off to 8, grab the 10 of the B, back to the 8 of the high E, repeat 3 times. And then finally back onto that 10 one final time for a full step bend that you're going to kind of choke off. Kind of like that, right? And then to finish the solo, is that right there, and it's very, very tricky to play. So we're sliding into 17 of the B, and then grabbing the 15 of the high E 4 times. Then you're gonna double time that, and repeat it like 8 times. And then finally finish on that 17 of the B. That's a little bit tricky at speed to when you're sliding into that 17 to stop on it, right? Because you're going so fast. Kind of like that, right? And then right back to an A for the next verse. And again, it's just over drums in the middle of the verse. Right back to A, choke it off, second half of the verse. Into another chorus, let's just recap it. D. Now you can play the A at the neck position here if you like, or like I was doing earlier, here, right? I like to go off to A. Now, at this point, before we repeat the chorus, we're into this. And then back into D again, right? So we're grabbing a little A bar chord here at the 12th fret position. We're going to arpeggiate some notes out of this. Just going to ride down the A, D, and G, and then chromatically back it up until you get to F. And when you get to F, you're just going to hit it twice, and then back it off to E, hit that twice, before dropping back into D again for the chorus. Kind of like that, right? Another chorus, right? And coming out of that chorus, out of E, we're into the outro guitar solo, which we're not going to get into, but I'm going to show you the rhythm underneath it, which is just another blues progression, but this time in A. 4 bars of that, right? Just bouncing off the 4 of the D. Into D for 2 bars. Back to A for 2 bars. Into E for 2 bars. Off to D for 2 bars. And then back to A for 4 bars. Just 12 bar blues, right? And then repeat. A. Into D. Back to A. Into E. Off to D. Back to A. And at this point, it's all just fading out, and there you go. That is how you play Razamanaz by Nazareth from 1973. Certainly hope you enjoyed that, found it helpful. If you did, please hit that like button right down there. Maybe drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be very kind. Hope you're well out there, and we will see you next time, yeah? Cheers.